Mom, Dad. But I can't marry someone I don't love.
You don't have a choice anyway. You are adopted.
It was her wedding day, but she wasn't smiling. Her heart was heavy. She stood in front of the altar, wearing a beautiful white gown, but she felt nothing. The man standing beside her was not the man she loved. Her real love was waiting in the shadows, too afraid to show his face. The only thing that was certain in her mind was that she had no choice. They had forced her into this marriage. She had always known she was different. When she was young, she had often wondered why she looked so different from the rest of her family. Her parents were wealthy, well known in their town, and had a good reputation. But she was adopted. From a young age, she understood that she had to stay in line, to be the good daughter, the obedient one, the one who would one day marry a man that her parents chose. She had been raised to think that money and status were the most important things in life. But there was something they hadn't counted on: her heart.
Before we continue, please take a moment to subscribe to my channel for awesome stories.
Her heart had always belonged to Michael. He was different. Michael wasn't rich. He didn't come from a prestigious family, and he didn't have connections that could help him climb the social ladder. But he had a kindness in him that no one else did. He made her laugh, he cared about her thoughts, and he saw her for who she truly was, not for the name or the wealth that came with her. But none of that mattered when her parents made their decision. They had always treated her like a tool to be used for their gain. When she was old enough to marry, they decided that it was time to set up the perfect match for her. And that's when they found Samuel. Samuel came from a family with money, but not much else. He wasn't cruel, but he wasn't kind either. He was obedient, just like her, and that was the trait her parents valued above all. They had always been strict with her, but this time, their demand felt like a sentence. They didn't care about her happiness. They cared about appearances. They cared about status. Samuel was a good match for them. Michael, on the other hand, was a nobody to them. His family didn't have wealth or the right connections. It didn't matter that he loved her. It didn't matter that they had shared so many beautiful moments together. What mattered was that her parents saw Samuel as the man who could offer her a future of wealth and security, not just love. Her heart shattered when she heard the news. She begged her parents to reconsider, to understand that she didn't want to marry Samuel. She wanted Michael. But her parents were unmoved. They told her that as an adopted child, she didn't have a choice in matters like this. They had raised her, given her everything, and now they expected her to return the favor by making this sacrifice. If she didn't, they threatened to cut her off completely. Her world was torn apart. On the one hand, she didn't want to lose her family, but on the other, she didn't want to be forced into a life with a man she didn't love. But as days passed, she realized that she had no other choice. Michael was heartbroken, but he knew that she couldn't defy her parents. It wasn't safe for her, and he didn't want to put her in more danger. The wedding day arrived, and her heart felt like a stone in her chest. She walked down the aisle with a numb expression on her face. Samuel's face was kind, but his eyes were cold. He had always known this was coming. He had always known that he was the man her parents wanted for her, and he was willing to do whatever it took to keep their favor. He didn't care that she didn't love him. To him, it was just business. As she stood in front of him, her eyes flickered to the back of the church, where Michael was standing. He was watching her, but he couldn't speak. The pain in his eyes mirrored her own. But she had made her choice, or rather her parents had made it for her. This was her life now. She couldn't change it. The ceremony began, and with every word spoken, it felt like a weight was added to her chest. She said the vows because she had to. She promised to love Samuel, though the words stuck in her throat. She promised to cherish him, though she knew in her heart that her real love would never fade. She could barely hear the priest's voice over the pounding in her ears. Every "I do" felt like a lie. Her eyes glanced around the room, trying to focus on something, anything, to distract her from the heaviness in her chest. The guests were all smiling, clapping, and congratulating, but she felt like an outsider in her own life, trapped in a role she hadn't chosen. Samuel took her hand in his, pulling her closer. His grip was firm, but she couldn't feel any warmth. There was no connection between them, no spark. Nothing like the way she felt when Michael looked at her. When Michael had touched her hand, it felt like her heart skipped a beat, but now her hand in Samuel's felt like it was simply there, nothing more. She didn't dare look back at Michael again. She knew he was still there, still watching, still hoping that somehow everything would turn out okay. But she couldn't let him see how broken she was. Not now, not in front of everyone. After the ceremony, they moved to the reception hall. It was a lavish affair, just like her parents had planned. The food was elegant, the decorations extravagant, but none of it felt real. It all felt like a show, a performance that she was forced to participate in. Samuel stood by her side, smiling at the guests, playing his role perfectly. But she saw the way his eyes darted toward the other women, always seeking validation, always looking for someone who could help him climb higher in society. It was clear to her now. Samuel didn't care about her, not really. He was just using her to secure his place in the world. He wasn't a bad man, but he wasn't the man she needed. He wasn't Michael. The night dragged on, but she couldn't shake the feeling that she was suffocating. She excused herself from the reception, needing to escape the fake smiles and forced laughter. She walked into the garden, hoping to find some peace. The cool air felt like a relief against her flushed skin. And then she heard footsteps behind her. "Are you okay?" It was Michael. His voice was soft, and she could hear the concern in it. She turned to face him, her breath catching in her throat. He was standing there, his eyes filled with sadness, but there was also something else. Determination. "I couldn't leave," he said, stepping closer. "I had to see you, to know that you're okay." "I'm not okay," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I never wanted this. I never wanted to marry him. I never wanted to be forced into this life." Michael reached out, his hand gentle as he cupped her face. "I know," he said quietly. "I know." She leaned into his touch, feeling the comfort she had longed for. For a moment, everything else faded away. There was no wedding, no Samuel, no pressure from her parents. It was just the two of them, standing in the quiet garden, sharing a moment of peace. But that peace was fleeting. "They won't let me go," she said softly. "They won't let me leave him." "I won't let you go," Michael replied, his voice strong. "I'll fight for you. I'll fight for us." Tears welled up in her eyes, but she quickly wiped them away. "You can't. It's not that simple, Michael. They won't allow it. I have no choice." Michael took a deep breath, his frustration evident. "I won't give up on you, no matter what they say. You deserve to be happy, not trapped in a marriage you don't want." She shook her head. "You don't understand. I've already lost so much. I can't lose my family too." "I understand more than you think," he said, his eyes never leaving hers. "I love you, and I'll wait for you. I'll wait for as long as it takes. But you don't have to do this alone." Her heart ached with the weight of his words. She wanted so badly to run away with him, to escape everything, but she knew the consequences of defying her parents. She had seen them punish those who didn't obey. She didn't want to end up like the others who had been cast aside, forgotten. For a moment she stood there, torn between two worlds. The life her parents had chosen for her and the life she wanted with Michael. Both felt like they were slipping through her fingers. "I can't leave," she whispered again, her voice shaking. Michael looked at her with such tenderness it almost broke her. "Then let me be your strength," he said quietly. "Let me be the one to fight for you." She closed her eyes, the tears finally falling freely. "I don't know how much longer I can keep pretending. I don't know how much longer I can live this lie." Michael stepped closer, wrapping his arms around her in a tight embrace. "You don't have to pretend, not with me. I'll always be here for you." The weight of his arms around her felt like a small comfort in a world that had become too heavy to bear. For a moment, she let herself fall into the safety of Michael's embrace, wishing that time could stop, that everything could be different. But the reality quickly crashed back into her thoughts. She pulled away gently, wiping her face with the back of her hand. "I'm trapped, Michael. she whispered, her voice trembling. "I'm not just bound by this wedding. I'm bound by their expectations. If I leave him, they'll make sure I never have a place in their world again." Michael's face hardened with frustration. "But you're not a prisoner. You can't let them control you like this. You deserve to make your own choices, to be with the person you truly love." She shook her head. "It's not that simple. They won't just let me go. It's not just about me and Samuel. It's about everything they've built. The name, the reputation, the family legacy. If I walk away from that, I'm nothing to them." Michael's hands clenched into fists at his sides. "You're wrong. You're not nothing. You're everything. They don't get to decide who you are. Only you can do that." She met his eyes, her heart heavy with the truth of his words. But the fear still lingered, gnawing at her insides. She had been raised to believe that her worth was tied to her family, to the name she carried. Now, it felt like that name was the very thing keeping her from the life she truly wanted. "I wish I could be as strong as you, Michael," she said softly, "but I'm scared. I don't know what will happen if I defy them." Michael stepped closer, his gaze softening. "You don't have to do it alone. I'll stand by you, no matter what. We'll find a way." She let out a shaky breath, feeling torn. "I don't know if there's a way. I don't know if I can keep living like this. Every day feels like a lie." Michael reached out and took her hand, his touch firm and reassuring. "Then let's start small, one step at a time. You don't have to make all the decisions today, but we'll figure it out." She nodded slowly, her heart pounding in her chest. The thought of going back to the reception, to Samuel, to the life she had been forced into seemed unbearable. But Michael's presence gave her a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, there was a way out. The night dragged on, and she returned to the reception hall, feeling like a stranger in her own skin. The guests were still mingling, still celebrating, but she was numb to it all. Samuel was by her side, but they didn't speak much. He seemed lost in his own world, focused on the people around him, as if the wedding was nothing more than a business deal. She couldn't stand the hollow emptiness between them. Every time he touched her, it felt wrong. Her thoughts kept drifting back to Michael, to the promise of a life that could have been. She tried to push those thoughts away to focus on the reality of her situation, but it was impossible. She couldn't pretend anymore. After what felt like hours, the reception finally ended. Samuel, ever the obedient son-in-law, offered his hand to her, a polite gesture that felt so empty. They made their way to the car, and she sat beside him, her heart sinking further with each passing second. The car ride was silent, save for the faint hum of the engine. When they arrived at the house, Samuel led her inside, but she felt like she was walking through a dream, disconnected from everything. Her parents were already there, waiting for her, smiling with satisfaction. It was as if they had won a game, as if this marriage was their victory. But to her, it felt like a prison. The next morning, she woke up in a room that was no longer hers. It was decorated with flowers, expensive furniture, everything designed to look perfect, but it all felt wrong. She lay in the bed, staring at the ceiling, unable to shake the feeling of emptiness. Samuel had already left for work, and the house was quiet. She thought about Michael. What was he doing now? Was he thinking of her too? Did he feel the same ache in his chest that she felt? She closed her eyes and imagined his face, the way he had held her last night, his eyes filled with love and determination. She wished she could be with him, but she knew that wasn't an option. Not now, not yet. But as she sat up, she realized that she couldn't live like this forever. She couldn't pretend to be happy in a marriage that wasn't hers, with a man who wasn't the one she loved. She couldn't let her parents dictate her life any longer. Something had to change. She spent the next few days in a daze. Every time Samuel came home, he was polite, courteous, but distant. It was as if he had already accepted the fact that their marriage wasn't about love. It was about maintaining appearances, about doing what was expected. And she could feel it. He didn't care about her, not really. But the more she thought about it, the more she realized that she didn't care about him either. She had been forced into this marriage, but she was no longer willing to accept a life of misery. One evening after dinner, she decided it was time. She needed to talk to her parents. She needed to make them understand that she couldn't go on living this way. She didn't know what the consequences would be, but she was willing to face them. She found her mother in the living room, sipping tea. Her father was nowhere to be seen. This was her chance. She took a deep breath and walked over to her mother. "I need to talk to you," she said, her voice steady but trembling on the inside. "I can't do this anymore. I can't stay in this marriage." Her mother didn't look surprised. In fact, she looked almost relieved. "I knew you'd come to this point eventually," her mother said, setting down her cup. "I know it's hard, but you have to understand. We did this for your future, for your security." "I don't want security," she replied, her voice stronger now. "I want to live my life. I want to be with the person I love. I want to make my own choices." Her mother sighed, shaking her head. "You don't understand. This was never about love. It's about stability. It's about making sure you're taken care of. This is the way the world works. You don't have the luxury of choosing love over everything else." "I don't care about luxury. I care about happiness," she said, her voice cracking with emotion. "And I'm not happy. I'm suffocating in this life you've chosen for me. I can't keep pretending." Her mother's expression hardened, the calm facade cracking for a moment as she stood up, her hands clenched tightly by her sides. "You think this is easy for me?" she asked, her voice low but sharp. "I had to do this too. Marry someone I didn't love, all for the sake of the family, for the sake of our future. Do you think I didn't want to choose love too?" Her mother's voice wavered slightly, as if the weight of her own words was finally catching up with her. "I'm not you, though," she said, standing her ground, her voice trembling but defiant. "I shouldn't have to live a life of regrets because of the decisions you made for me. I deserve more than this." Her mother was silent for a long moment. Her face was a mix of frustration and disappointment. Then she spoke again, her voice soft and full of resignation. "You think you're making this better by following your heart. You think Michael will be able to give you the life you deserve. He can't even offer you a fraction of what Samuel can. You're choosing a path that could destroy everything." "I don't care anymore," she said, her voice firm now. "I'd rather have nothing with Michael than everything with Samuel. I love him, and that's the only thing that matters." Her mother stared at her for a moment, then turned away, her shoulders sagging in defeat. "I can't change your mind, can I?" "No," she said, shaking her head. "You can't." The next few days were a blur. The weight of her conversation with her mother lingered, but she felt a sense of freedom she hadn't felt in a long time. For the first time, she was doing something for herself, something that felt right in her heart, even if the world around her didn't understand. Michael had been calling her, leaving messages, asking if she was okay. She had avoided him at first, too scared of what would happen if she let him back into her life. But now she knew she couldn't keep pushing him away. She couldn't keep pretending that her life was okay when it wasn't. She picked up the phone, her hand shaking slightly, and dialed his number. He answered on the first ring. "Hello?" His voice was cautious, but there was an edge of hope in it. "I need to see you," she said, her voice shaky but determined. "I can't do this anymore. I can't live this lie." There was a long pause before he spoke. "I'll be there. I'll come for you." That night, Michael arrived at her house. She had asked him to meet her outside, away from the prying eyes of her parents. When she saw him standing there in the shadows, she couldn't help but run into his arms. It felt like the weight of the world lifted off her shoulders, just for a moment. "I've missed you so much," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I've missed you too," Michael said, his arms pulling her close. "I've been waiting for you to make a choice. I never wanted to push you, but I knew you'd come to this moment. You deserve to be happy no matter what." "I don't know what to do, Michael," she said, her voice trembling. "I don't want to lose everything, but I can't live this way." "We'll figure it out," he said, his voice calm and reassuring. "Together we'll figure it out. You don't have to go through this alone anymore." In the days that followed, she made the hardest decision of her life. She sat down with her parents again, but this time her voice was strong and her words were clear. "I'm leaving Samuel," she said. "I'm choosing my own path. I'm choosing love over security. I know you won't understand, but this is the life I want. This is the life I deserve." Her father's face was unreadable, but she saw the disappointment in her mother's eyes. "You're making a mistake," her mother said quietly. "This will change everything." "I'm already changed," she replied, her voice steady. "And I'm not sorry." The silence in the room was thick. Her parents didn't speak. There was nothing left to say. She had made her choice and they had to accept it. She moved out of the house that day, the weight of her decision heavy in her chest but light in her soul. Michael was there to support her, to help her through every step. It wasn't easy, and there were many obstacles ahead. Her parents had made it clear they were disappointed, and she knew they would never look at her the same way again. But for the first time, she felt free. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing for certain. She was choosing her own happiness. She was choosing love, and that made all the difference. Days turned into weeks, and life began to settle. She and Michael started building a life together, one that was simpler but filled with more joy than she ever imagined possible. There were struggles, of course, financial challenges, whispers from people who didn't understand, but they faced it all together. She never went back to her parents. She didn't have to. She had learned that she could live without their approval, that she was stronger than she ever thought possible. And as for Samuel, he moved on with his life too. He wasn't the man she had imagined spending her life with, and that was okay. She had made the right choice. It wasn't the life she thought she'd have, but it was the life she wanted. And sometimes that was enough. Months passed, and life started to feel like a fresh chapter. She and Michael were growing closer every day, their bond strengthening in ways she hadn't anticipated. They faced the world together, and though there were challenges, they were always ready to take them head-on. The weight of her parents' disapproval no longer held her back. It wasn't easy, but she had never felt more at peace. One evening, as they walked down the street after a quiet dinner, Michael stopped her in front of a small, cozy cafe. She turned to him, curious, and he smiled, something playful yet serious in his eyes. "You know," he said softly, "I've been thinking." "Uh-oh?" she teased. "That's never a good sign." Michael laughed, but his expression quickly became more serious. "I've been thinking about how much we've been through together, about how much you've sacrificed to be with me, how much you've fought for this love, and I don't want you to fight anymore." Her brow furrowed in confusion. "What do you mean?" He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Her heart skipped a beat as he opened it, revealing a simple, beautiful ring. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life. I want to spend the rest of it with you. I want to build a life with you, a life that's ours, no one else's. No expectations, no rules, just us." Her eyes widened, and the world seemed to pause around her. All the years of pressure, of trying to live up to everyone else's standards, had led her to this moment, the moment when she realized that love wasn't about fulfilling others' expectations. It was about choosing each other, despite everything. Michael, She couldn't find the words. All the emotions she had been bottling up for so long came rushing to the surface. He smiled, the warmth in his eyes a silent promise. "Will you marry me? Will you choose us forever?" Tears filled her eyes, but this time they were tears of joy. For the first time, she wasn't being forced into a decision. She was choosing this, choosing him, choosing a future they would create together. "Yes," she whispered, her voice shaking with emotion. "Yes, I will." And in that moment, standing under the dim streetlights, with the world bustling around them, she knew she had made the right choice. Not just for herself, but for the life they would build, free from the chains of expectations. They kissed, and for the first time in her life she felt truly free. It wasn't about the wealth, the status, or the family legacy. It was about love. The love she had fought for. The love that had always been worth the fight. As they walked away hand in hand, the cafe lights twinkling in the background. She couldn't help but feel that her life was just beginning. The future was uncertain, yes, but it was theirs to shape, and that was all that mattered.
Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to my channel for more.